sobering news from the UN about the sharp spike in migrant drownings in 2016. The World Health Organization pushes plain cigarette packaging to help smokers kick the habit. And anger erupts on social media over a dead gorilla, a boy, and accusations of bad parenting. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. The United Nations Refugee Agency announced Tuesday that more than 2,500 migrants have lost their lives trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Europe this year. Last year, more than 1,800 people died in the first 5 months. At a news briefing Tuesday, a UNHCR spokesman said that migrants crossing the Mediterranean now have a 1 in 81 chance of dying. He said that 2,119 people died this year on the North Africa-Italy route. The odds of dying on that route are as high as 1 in 23. Humanitarian organizations have circulated a photo of a German rescue worker holding a drowned baby to persuade European authorities to take action on the ongoing tragedy. The UNHCR says most migrants taking the North Africa route are from Nigeria and Gambia, and most Syrian, Afghan and Iraqis continue to take the Turkey-Greece route. During the past week, an estimated 880 migrants and refugees died trying to cross the Mediterranean. Now, Ivory Coast former First Lady Simone Bagbo went on trial on Tuesday, accused of crimes against humanity and war crimes for her alleged role in a 2011 civil war. The court case at home came after the government rejected her extradition to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The prosecution alleges she was part of an inner circle of her husband's key backers that planned violence against the then presidential candidate Alassane Ouattara's supporters as a means of maintaining Bagbo in power. Human rights groups, including the International Federation for Human Rights, which was representing victims in the domestic case against Simone Bagbo, announced this week that it was withdrawing its participation in the war crimes trial. They claimed the prosecution's investigation had been rushed and would not give victims a full picture of the Bagbo administration's orchestration of the post-election violence. Now, for more on Mrs. Bagbo's trial, journalist Roberto Valusi joins me via Skype from Abidjan. Roberto, welcome to Africa 54.
Hello, thanks.
Yes,
thanks for having me.
Yes, first, just tell us what happened in court today.
Well, the trial is starting, and Ms. Bagbo is going back to trial after being, as you said, condemned already to 20 years for crimes committed in the post-electoral crisis in 2010 and 11. So the trial is starting. There are new charges. Besides crimes, she's being charged for war crimes, because last year the Ivorian Parliament introduced the crime against humanity and war crimes. So now she's been being judged for those kind of charges.
Mm-hmm. Now, and we're having some audio problems here, but what are the issues regarding the withdrawal, particularly of those human rights groups that say the case is flawed? What is the problem? Several
human rights groups withdrew from the process, mentioning several irregularities in the process, in the trial. We're not going to get lost in the details, but they said that the civil parts were not notified of the decision taken by the court. And the most sensitive point is that they are basically saying that they are against the fact that Simone Bagbo is being judged alone by herself. So she's been somehow singled out, while last year they had this collective trial with more than 150 people standing on trial. Now they're only bringing Simone Bagbo. And their main critique is that all these is not going to help to shed light and bring justice to all the crimes that happened during the post-electoral crisis. And the lawyers in a statement mentioned the fact that not only crimes committed by Bagbo's side took place, but there are also a considerable amount of crimes committed by Alassane Ouattara's militias. Alassane Ouattara was the rival of Gbagbo during the conflict. So if they only look at Simone Gbagbo, they're going to discard all the rest. That's the fear of these human rights organizations.
Quickly, Roberto, are there those who feel like the politics is playing into this rather than just sticking with justice?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the position of, from their point of view, this is all a political game. And the main goal is to shelter the pro-Ouattara's people from further prosecution. In which way? We have to mention the role of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, which is now judging Gbagbo in The Hague, demanded Simone Gbagbo to The Hague for judging on similar charges. Côte d'Ivoire has been staunchly refusing to send Simone Gbagbo to Côte d'Ivoire on the ground that their judiciary system is now capable of dealing with that, with this thing. So yes.
We will follow up with this. Thank you very much for now. Thanks for your reporting.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. That's Roberto Belushi reporting live via Skype from Abidjan in Ivory Coast. Now, more than 15 years since Global Treaty to Combat Human Trafficking was adopted, nearly 46 million people are enslaved, and that's according to the 2016 Global Slavery Index published on Tuesday. The index by Australia-based human rights group Walk Free Foundation increased its estimate of people born into servitude, trafficked for sex work, or trapped in debt, bondage, or forced labor to nearly 46 million from about 36 million in 2014. Andrew Forrest, founder of Walk Free, said the rise of nearly 30% was due to better data collection, although he feared the situation was getting worse with global displacement and migration, increasing vulnerability to all forms of slavery. Now, for some insight into global slavery, I'm joined by Terry Fitzpatrick, Communication Director at Free the Slaves, a U.S.-based organization dedicated to ending all forms of slavery. Mr. Fitzpatrick, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, welcome. We're happy to have you with us. And one of the things that confuses people is what is what is slavery? Because people always have this idea that it is, just a trade where people are literally sold and held in bondage.
Sure. Slavery has changed the nature of slavery from, say, 150 years ago, when Africans were kidnapped from throughout the continent, put on slave ships, and then sent to the Americas or into Europe. Now, people are enslaved largely in place, or they deliver themselves to Europe or to America where they are enslaved. So slavery never really went away. It has just taken different forms. And slavery never ended. It was outlawed. When the end of the transatlantic slave trade ended 150 years ago, it was made illegal, but it was never really eradicated. And that's why we see these reports, and that's why we still have the problem today.
And now, looking at this report, of course, it says it's kind of expanded the groups that would be considered being in some form of slavery.
Yes.
In terms of, like Africa, we have looked at so many things that sometimes, make you wonder what is what? What are your assessment of
what
the situation
is slavery?
in Africa?
Well, Africa is one of the world's hotspots for slavery, particularly parts of West Africa, Central Africa, and, say, South Africa and the southern tip of Africa. And that's because of particular vulnerabilities. This is real slavery. People, say, are migrating and get tricked by a trafficker. There are millions of people moving from poor areas to wealthier cities or from poorer countries to wealthier ones looking to send money back home. And this is a largely unregulated, unpoliced flow of people around the world. And when traffickers pose as legitimate labor recruiters, and when they get people away from home, away from their countries, away from their support networks, they're trapped. Also, it's debt. People fall into debt because they don't have access to health care. They don't have better policing to keep people, traffickers at bay. There's conflict, which kind of interrupts the rule of law and access to justice and education systems. Or there's climate shock from climate change. And people find themselves without resilience to withstand some kind of emergency, where they have to borrow money from someone. And then,
to pay back.
And then they have to work it off. And once they get to the mine or to the rubber plantation or to the timber cutting operation, that's when the hammer drops.
Now, strictly on the definition of that word, slavery, I mean, there are people who are in a form of slavery, but they don't think so. or who are actually slave owners or who are trading in slavery, but they don't think of themselves as such.
It's true. Awareness in the United States and Europe has grown from that there is a global problem to now that there is a global solution. But where slavery is worst, there is not as much awareness right now that this isn't just the way things are, that there is hope, and that this actually is illegal by United Nations treaties, and every country, including every country in Africa, has passed a law making this illegal. So it's not just the UN telling Africa what to do, it's African countries themselves saying that this is illegal. But people haven't necessarily heard that if they're in remote villages or if they're in conflict zones, or say in the case of Boko Haram, where there are raids, where girls are kidnapped and sold into sex slavery.
How can you, what's your thought of on the issue of this migration now? We're seeing the influx of people going to Europe.
Well, sure. There's a difference between migration and smuggling of people and trafficking them with the intent to enslave them when they get there. So much of what's happening in Europe is actually migration, not actually human trafficking for the purpose of enslaving them in Europe. Some people will end up, unfortunately, in slavery when they get there because they're vulnerable. But most of the traffic is people moving away from conflict zones in the Middle East through an African route, or from Africa into Europe for better economic chances. The good news is, though, even though this is a global problem and there are tens of millions of people, which is more than there ever were 150 years ago, in slavery, we can solve this. Better policing, reduce the demand for products that are made by slavery, and then cut off the supply of vulnerable people in the systems of slavery by empowering people at a village level. That will do it. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much, and that's the kind of good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Terry. Terry Fitzpatrick is the communications director at the U.S.-based Free the Slaves organization. Israel's ultra-nationalist new defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, says he backs a two-state solution, prompting analysts to say, well, the Paris ministerial meeting aimed at ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict later this week may get Israel to reluctantly accept to move the peace process forward. That is, despite low expectations of a breakthrough. VOA State Department correspondent Nick Ching has the story.
The recent escalation in violence between Israelis and Palestinians suggests the conflict has become the status quo for both sides. But there is a glimmer of hope with Israel's hawkish new defense minister, Lieberman, saying he supports two states for two peoples. More than 2 years after the breakdown of peace talks, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has not given up hope for a lasting solution.
I will work with the French, I'll work with the Egyptians, I will work with the Arab community, I'll work with the global community in good faith in an effort to see if we can find a way to help the parties see their way to come back and ultimately see their way to a final status agreement that meets the needs of the parties, the needs of the region.
While cautioning the ministers should not get their hopes up, analysts say the latest development may help move the peace process forward.
They might get Israel to acquiesce somewhat to this kind of idea, but a major breakthrough, a major movement in the peace process, that remains quite low.
The Paris gathering without Israelis or Palestinians present is intended to pave the way for an international conference to set new parameters for negotiating a Palestinian state alongside Israel. Nike Chin, VOA News, the State Department.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, could plain cigarette packs help smokers quit? Stay with us.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
At Al-Auda Hospital in the northern Gaza Strip, a young patient is being prepped for hand surgery. It's being guided by a doctor hundreds of kilometers away in Beirut. using an online interactive platform for tablet computers called Proximi. A specialist, Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, directs the surgery.
The images will be on my iPad, on which I will be drawing where the surgeon should cut on the other side to be able to do the operation.
Proximi co-founder Nadine Hachacharam says the technology makes medical expertise more accessible.
This platform is for all the countries in the world, not only for the countries with no access or for countries asking for expertise from abroad. This is for everyone.
Proximi has been used in the United States, UK, Peru, and Vietnam, and now in Gaza. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
But joining us now is Africa 54 Health correspondent Lino Madu. What do you have for us today, Lino?
Hello, Vincent. Simultaneous outbreaks of cholera and chikungunya are straining local health services in northeastern Kenya. In Kenya's Mandera County, more than 10 deaths from cholera have been reported since April. Doctors Without Borders, MSF, says the outbreak has been ongoing for about 17 months. Almost 800 cases have been reported during this period, concentrated in Mandera Township. MSF says the Mandera Referral Hospital has been overwhelmed by cholera patients and expressed concern that health facilities will continue to struggle as chikungunya patients also seek treatment, which is affecting even medical personnel. Chikungunya is a mosquito-borne illness that causes high fever, joint pain, and headache. Now, the World Health Organization marked World No Tobacco Day on May 31st by promoting less attractive packaging. Plain packaging is recommended in WHO's Framework Convention for Tobacco Control Guidelines as part of a comprehensive approach to tobacco control that includes large graphic health warnings and comprehensive bans on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. The WHO reports almost 6 million people a year die prematurely from tobacco-related illnesses. The number is projected to rise to more than 8 million by 2030. More than 80% of these preventable deaths occurring in developing countries. Australia in 2012 became the first country to introduce plain packaging of tobacco products, along with new and enlarged health warnings. Joining us now via Skype from Kampala, Uganda, for more on the subject is Dr. Hamed Uma, Regional Advisor for the Tobacco Control Program in the African region with the World Health Organization. Dr. Uma, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
First off, can you give us a sense of how tobacco is affecting the African continent?
Tobacco is affecting the continent at several levels. First is there are countries that grow tobacco. And in those communities, we find that poverty is quite widespread because you cannot eat the tobacco plant. You rely on the tobacco industry buying it, and usually the prices are not very good for the farmers. So it affects them, the environment, socially, and of course economically. At another level is consumption of the product. We are seeing an increase in youth and even adults, the numbers that are actually consuming tobacco, and this results in a lot of health complications and problems, and therefore affects them from a social angle in terms of health and the costs of trying to treat those conditions. So in general, tobacco use, tobacco growing, exposure to tobacco smoke is affecting the region very negatively, and if we don't do something about it, it will be quite a widespread epidemic in a short while.
And the WHO is recommending plain packaging as a step toward a solution. How can plain packaging make a difference?
Plain packaging makes a big difference. First is that it actually standardizes the color and presentation of tobacco products packaging. It reduces the attractiveness of the package and therefore makes it less likely for especially young people to be attracted to tobacco as a product. Second is it removes the tobacco package as a platform for advertising and promotion by the tobacco industry. you will have seen in some countries where they use colors and images that are very attractive. But in plain packaging, you use one single color, therefore the advantage of advertising for the industry is removed.
Okay.
Third is it removes the misleading advertising. You'll see some cigarettes being called light or lota and things like that. Those are removed. And finally, it enhances the health warning, both in terms of the picture and in the words. They become bigger, they become more prominent because they're on a background that is less colorful than what we have currently.
And Dr. Umar, we're running out of time, but quickly, Australia and a few European countries have implemented this. What about Africa? Very quickly in 10 seconds.
Not yet in Africa, but we are working with the governments in Africa to get the countries to join this global movement of plain packaging.
Okay, Dr. Umar, thank you so much for joining us.
Most welcome, thank you.
And that was Dr. Ahmed Umar. He is Regional Advisor for the Tobacco Control Program in the African region with the WHO. And that's our health report for today. So stay in touch for more. Find me on Twitter @Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, and thank you very much for joining us today, Lenore. Now, be sure to watch for Lenore Moudou every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa, right here on Africa 54. Well, it's strawberry season in parts of the world, which coincides with a number of strawberry festivals where local farmers gather and showcase their latest harvest. A small coastal town just north of Rabat in Morocco called Moulay Bousselham is the host of the country's annual strawberry festival, but climate change has had an enduring impact. Now, Samia Erizuki reports from Morocco.
The coastal town of Moulay Bousselham is well known for its rich strawberry harvest. It hosts most of Morocco's strawberry fields, which produce one of the country's top exporting goods, especially to Europe. The ample strawberry production in Moulay Bousselham inspired a local NGO to organize an annual strawberry festival, which has been taking place since 2011. Drawing the participation of some of the town's local farmers, the festival lasts 4 days and includes roundtables and live traditional music, among other events.
I established the Strawberry Festival for cultural, touristic and agricultural reasons. Among the main reasons is to bring about greater awareness of this beautiful region, the Western region, which is known for its adequate climate, its fertile soil and clean fresh water.
The Moulay Bousselham Strawberry Festival is also an occasion for local girls to compete in the festival's beauty pageant. I'm really excited and feel super happy about winning. I'm also thankful for my aunt who helped me win this tiara. This year's edition of the Strawberry Festival is being held under the theme of climate change. Unusually warm temperatures and lack of rainfall during the winter brought about the strawberry harvest a few months earlier than usually expected.
At first, the weather was fine. Around March and April, the weather started changing. When the weather changes, the production of strawberries decreases. During the beginning, there were no issues, but now the production is relatively low.
Nearly 95% of Morocco's strawberries are exported, most of which end up in Europe, mainly Spain. Morocco's early harvest this year coincided with the Spanish strawberry harvest, resulting in a reduction of strawberry exports. This is not all bad news, however, since it means that more Moroccans will get the chance to enjoy a greater quantity of locally grown strawberries. Sami Arazuki for VOA, Moulay Bousselham, Morocco.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a gorilla is killed to protect a child. So why are people up in arms? We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Ivory Coast, rights groups acting as plaintiffs blast proceedings of trial of former First Lady Simone Gbagbo as flawed and pull out of the case. In Angola, thousands of small business owners struggle to keep going amid worsening economy. In Nigeria, traffic sharing app Go My Way offers workers a way to save fuel amidst rising fuel prices. Finally, in South Africa, national rugby team announces that Adrian Strauss will be its captain during a 3-test home series against Ireland in June. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Was shooting a rare gorilla the only option for Cincinnati Zoo? Well, zookeepers killed Harambe the gorilla after a 4-year-old boy slipped into its enclosure. The boy went under a rail, through wires and over a moat wall to get to the gorilla. Now, the footage later shows Harambe dragging the child through a pool of water. Zookeepers then shot the 450-pound gorilla with a rifle rather than tranquilizing him. A clip of the tense encounter set off an uproar on the internet. Opinion is divided on who's to blame for the Harambe's death, the zoo or the boy's parents. Well, next up, it's a new twist on speed reading. This is Berlin-based Blinklist, an app that says it allows people to read nonfiction books in under 15 minutes. The Blinklist writers read famous nonfiction books, then condense the ideas down to bite-sized snippets called blinks. The company has more than 700,000 users, and the blinks are available in German and English. There are over 1,500 books in the Blinklist library, all non-fiction. One particularly successful section is books that focus on parenting, perhaps a sign that new parents have even less time than other people. Well, and finally, Namibia has some of the tallest dunes in the world, and their beauty alone attracts tourists from all over. The dramatic dunes also make the Southern African country one of the best spots in the world for sandboarding, the desert equivalent of snowboarding. Sandboarding is one of many adrenaline sports available around the desert town of Swakopmund. Lie-down boards are easier for beginners and faster than snowboards. All-terrain vehicles or quad bikes provide another desert experience. After a short briefing adventure, seekers choose either a 125cc or 250cc quad bike. Riders travel in single file and stay on that flat gravel patches where wildlife can be found. And that is what is trending today. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Here is a story that has to do with defects or problems with cars.
Listen for the word that means to take back something. Recall.
They had meetings over this defect. They shared complaints over this defect. Yet there was no investigation by the government and no recall by General Motors until 10 years later.
Recall. It is a word that means to ask people officially to return something.
In our story, there were major problems with some General Motors cars. The man says the U.S. government and the car company took too long to issue a recall, so the cars could be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word recall, your American English will be good enough to know what this news word means.